digitization and AI in healthcare, which is our focus of the day. So we are grateful that in our panel today, we have two panelists who will help us to delve into this topic. So we are going to first listen to the presentations of our two panelists, and then we'll interact with them in form of questions, comments, and suggestions. Therefore, you can either type your question on the chat or use the tools to raise your hand. So allow me now to usher in our first panelist, and would like to begin by introducing him before he makes his presentation. So our first panelist is Samuel Kariuki. And Samuel Kariuki holds a bachelor degree in electrical and electronic engineering, where he obtained first-class honors from Dikut University. He is currently a master's research student at Gifu University, Japan, in the Department of Intelligence, Science, and Engineering. He is majoring in intelligent mechanical engineering, and the aim of his research is being on the design and high precision position and force control in robotics geared toward automating skilled workmanship. And some of his contribution in the field of AI are: one, he has currently presented an AI-based project for enhancing the in-flight experience at the annual Boeing company seminar in the universities in Japan. He is also part of 3 members team working on developing an AI and Internet of Things, that is IoT-based startup. And so Samuel, as an upcoming researcher in robotics, is one of the branches of AI. It's a pleasure to have you, to have you discuss how these technologies are impacting our present and shaping the future. So Samuel will present to us an overview of artificial intelligence in healthcare, meaning, classification, and subfield. So Samuel, you are welcome. You can share your screen with us. And we want to sincerely thank you in advance for making time, despite being midnight by you, and making time to be with us. So most welcome.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Dr. Teresa. So I'll be sharing my screen right now. Okay. All right. I hope you can all see my screen. Can someone please confirm?
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear. Go ahead.
All right. So welcome to this session on AI. So just a minute. Yes. So I'll now go ahead and look at the introduction to artificial intelligence, where basically we'll be asking the question, what is AI and how is it applied in health? So to start with, an overview of what I'll be looking at will be: one, the definitions, the AI classifications, and the subfields. And then I'll go ahead and look at the applications in health. After that, I'll look at the good practice, concerns, and regulations. So I'll go ahead and start with the first one. So what is AI? I know we have all been hearing the term AI, artificial intelligence, everywhere, and on all news, on all avenues, they're talking about it. But the simple definition for AI is a field of computer science and technology that focuses on creating systems, machines, or software that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. So basically, if you have any machine, like for example, down there, we can see a tractor, and then you give it some kind of human intelligence, you basically have an artificial intelligence system. Although we currently do not have a tractor that has AI, but that is just one example where the tractor represents a machine, and then combining the machine with some aspect of human intelligence, which I'll briefly look at in the next slide, then you get AI. So what is human intelligence? Intelligence is basically the ability to learn or understand or deal with new or trying situations. So basically, by intelligence, we mean that you can understand and learn, and then based on what you know and what you've learned, then you can form judgments and opinions and be able to do reasoning abilities. And this is where now human intelligence comes in, where we now combine the intelligence, the ability to learn or understand as an inherent part of human beings, whereby human intelligence is now the capacity or ability to acquire, apprehend, and apply knowledge. So from the human intelligence, because we've seen that AI is combining a machine with human intelligence. So we now go ahead and look at the associated behaviors with human intelligence. So the first one is perception. You see, and then from what you see, you can then do some analysis and yeah, deduce what it is. Like from my background, you can see there's a big building, and then all that processing, like there's a building, what type of building, it's a tall building, there's lighting. So basically perception is all about the senses, the five senses. You have the eyes, the sight, the touch, the hearing, the taste. So we have that. And then we have reasoning, learning, problem solving, creativity, and finally, interaction with the environment. So in the following slide, I'll now be looking at how AI has managed to be able to realize a few of these human intelligence associated behaviors. And to do that, there's this test for intelligence in AI, which was proposed in 1950 by Alan Turing. So basically, this is now where the age of AI began, where in 1950, the guy on the right, Alan Turing, he's a computing pioneer. He proposed a model that could be able to evaluate whether something that somebody claims to be AI is actually AI. And although this test is highly debated, it is still very instrumental, even right now in 2023, where we have highly advanced in AI. And how it works is that you have a human being and the artificial intelligence model. And then we have a judge who is a human being. And then you ask the questions, or whether if it's an AI that can respond to a question, then you ask the same question or a set of random questions to the AI and to the human being. And then based on the answer, the human being who is acting as the judge should then be able to tell apart which is the human being, who is the human being, and which is the AI. And if it becomes very difficult or nearly impossible for the human judge to tell that this is the human being and this is the machine, then we can say that the AI has passed the Turing test, which is it's like an imitation game because we basically see that artificial intelligence aims to imitate human beings. And therefore, if the AI can actually imitate the human being to an extent that another human being cannot tell them apart, then it has actually passed that test. And therefore, after that, we have some three classifications based on intelligence. Where one, we have the weak AI, and this is artificial intelligence with limited capability. And this can execute very specific tasks because, as we'll see, AI is actually trained. So you train it to do something, and then it does that particular thing very efficiently. So an example of this will be voice-based personal assistants, where, for example, if you own an Android phone, then you have the Google Assistant. If you own an iPhone, you have Siri and very many others that are so well trained in, say, the voice recognition that they can actually respond to your queries. And then for strong AI, this is AI with intelligence at par with human beings. An example of this will be the robot we see on your right, where it can actually challenge a human being. And at the moment, that is actually fictional because for this case, we had a robot that could actually run and think as a human being would. And at the moment, we've not gotten to that level. And it is still a work in progress, but yeah, we are looking forward to seeing how that will be. And finally, we have super intelligence, which is now what creates a lot of worry about the future, where an all-knowing AI is theoretically possible, but very far from happening as at this moment, and that is super intelligence. So this is a simple classification based on intelligence, but from here, I'll now be looking at the more in-depth classifications and subfields of AI, which I'll now relate to the applications in health. So to give an overview of what I'll be looking at, one, we have machine learning, and then I'll go ahead and look at deep learning, robotics, natural language processing, NLP, computer vision, and finally, I'll look at expert systems. So to start with the first one, machine learning. So machine learning is basically the beginning of AI. It's where like AI began from, because machine learning basically focuses on the use of data and algorithms to imitate the way humans learn and improve its accuracy. So basically, some of the tasks that ML, machine learning, can do is one, classification, prediction, or giving insights, whereby classification is where you have, say, a picture, and then you want a particular machine learning model to identify whether it's a dog or a cat. So you basically have groups, and then you have a model that can actually group some particular data into one group or another. And then for prediction, you have a set of data, say, on weather. For example, today was sunny, yesterday was rainy, the other day is cloudy. And then you have a series of data, like search data for a very long time. And then based on that data and the weather patterns that are happening, then you can have an AI model that can actually predict how the weather will be, say, tomorrow or in a week's time. And then finally, we have the giving key insights from data. So based on ML, we have three main classifications. The first one is supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. So as you'll probably realize from this slide going downwards, the namings for the various artificial intelligence sectors or subfields, they're basically like English based. So as you read it, that is basically what it does. So for example, for supervised machine learning, we have a model that is actually trained. So it receives supervision, and this supervision comes in the form of having a labeled data set. So basically you have data, say this data contains this particular information, and then that data is actually already notated in that. As an example, you have an image. So in the case of supervised machine learning, when you're training a model to be able to do a particular task, you give it the image and then tell it this image is a cat or this image is a dog. And then you train it on that with very many thousands or even millions of data. And then after that, after the training, you test it. So you've given it, say, 1,000 images of a cat and 1,000 images of a dog. And then that is the training. It undergoes training in random orders. And then you have another new or different data set where you now remove the label and then give it, say, an image of a dog and ask it, is this a dog or a cat? And then it should be able to tell you that accurately. And then based on what you get and the percentages, because basically when we are testing and when we are training and testing a machine learning model, we do the percentages or like the probability of it being a cat or a dog. So based on that, you have, say, a range of 0 to 100%, and anything above 90 should be very okay. But if you get something below 50, it means your training hasn't happened very well and you need to do some bit of optimization. So examples of this in like daily life-to-life activities will be facial recognition, where you just have your phone, you pick it up, and then you unlock it using your phone. We have the email spam detection, where automatically there are some emails that are sent to spam so that, yeah, they can automatically be recognized as not being useful to you because they are automated. And then we have the weather forecasting. So for unsupervised machine learning, As opposed to supervised machine learning, you have data without labels. So in this case, you just have, say, an image, and you don't tell the machine learning model that this is a dog or a cat. What happens is that you just give it an image, and then you give it many more such images, and it can actually extract a few of the features and relate this with this particular category. So for example, if you give it an image of a dog, thousands of those, it can tell, okay, I think this, I don't know what this is, but it has long ears, it has, say, a long tongue, and these are the features, the facial features associated with it. And therefore, if you give it new data that contains those features, then it can tell you to a very high probability that, I don't know whether this is a dog, but based on the data that I have, this is this image. And if that image is actually a dog, then it's very correct. And examples of those will be clustering, where you have some customer segmentation, where, say, right now I'm in Japan, and we have such like, so about 150 million people, yeah, about 150 million is the population. And basically, if you are to do targeted advertising, you'd like to group your say your customers, if you are a mobile provider, like the data, you'd like to know who are the people who use my data packages more. Is it people who are between the ages of, say, 18 and 25, or is it someone over the age of 40? So basically, customer segmentation will, you don't know the exact people who use them, but based on, say, age or various other parameters, then you can try and classify the people who, say, use your product and many other uh, applications. And then for reinforcement learning, this is training by trial and error, where you just tell like your machine learning model that, yeah, so I have given you the data, the training, and I basically want you to follow this path. And to explain this, I'll give the case of a self-driving car. You have a self-driving car that can drive itself. So as you continue, as the car continues driving, we want it to improve itself, because when you're training a car to self-drive, you basically can't give it all the information that it requires to know how to drive efficiently. What you can do is start with a model, and then when you have that model, start in a you start it in a controlled environment whereby, say, you are in a like no cars, no people, and then can it maintain a straight line? It can do that. And then you keep advancing the challenges depending on how successful it becomes. And this is maybe one of the reasons why, say, in Nairobi, it might be a bit difficult to have a self-driving car because, say, we have unregulated traffic, and therefore, because reinforcement learning happens in the process, like you learn by error. So you do something, is it okay? Yes. Then you're given a tick, so continue doing that. If it's not okay, if you make, say, if you hit a person and you're a self-driving car, then you receive punishment for that. And we don't want that happening. So we have to regulate the environment which reinforcement learning happens. And this is why self-driving cars, they are the cars of the future, but they have to be gradual. Like you have to do the implementation in a, say, a systematic place, and then you keep advancing it until ultimately it can be able to operate itself autonomously. And that is machine learning. Uh, and then for deep learning, this is basically a neural network with 3 or more layers, whereby the neural network tries to mimic the human brain, whereby for the human brain, the image we have at the bottom there, we have a human neuron, where we have the part that receives the stimulus. And then based on that stimulus, say it's touch. So if I touch here, then they are the impulses that are sent from the brain, from the hand, like using the nerve endings. And then that information is sent to the brain. And there's a series of other activities happening in between. But basically, the human neuron senses and then that perception, that signal is sent for interpretation to the brain. So in the same way, neural networks are basically a replication of the human neuron, whereby we try to imitate the functioning of the human brain. And from the image on your right, we can see the green layer is the input layer. So for the input layer, we have the data. For example, in the case of the image, again, I think by now you've become a bit familiar with that example. We have an image, and then from that image, it like we want to know every pixel, what every pixel holds. For example, if it's like at night, like in my case, we want to know that maybe at this far end, it's dark, and then at this other point, we have a building and it's a bit bright. And then based on that data, then we proceed to, for every hidden layer, for every layer, like the red layers, then they'll detect some particular feature, and then they keep on detecting the features as we proceed with the layers in such a way that when we get to the output, we can actually recognize that this is an image with a building at the center and with Sam being the speaker. And therefore, deep neural networks are basically one, you have an input layer, which you give the data, and then two, you have the output, with the output being what you want to happen. Where, for example, in the applications, we have bioinformatics, where we have the phone fingerprint application. So basically, the input will be when you get to do the 5 or like input your please place your finger on the fingerprint scanner. You do that like several times. And when you're doing that, you're basically giving it the input data so that it can tell the fingerprint patterns are in this and this way. And then based on that fingerprint, then the output should be when you press your fingerprint after setting up, then the phone should unlock. So basically the input is the data that you'd like to get to know something about. And the hidden layers are what you now use to extract all the features. And these hidden layers, they may vary from one, with one being the minimum for a neural network. And that is why it has to have more, at least 3 layers, with the first one being the input layer, a hidden layer, and an output layer. And the hidden layers, the complexity of a neural network increases with the increase in the number of hidden layers. Therefore, you have a deep neural network, a very advanced deep neural network with very many hidden layers. And with more hidden layers, then you can extract more features and therefore get more information from a particular data set. And the applications for those are in bioinformatics for the phone fingerprint, speech recognition, where again, the case of Siri, Google Assistant, or Alexa, where you have to train it a little bit, like when you get the phone for the first time, you have to input a small segment with you saying something so that it can associate like the keywords and all the speech inputs with your voice in such a way that when someone else tries to do that, then it might not work because it has been associated with your voice. And then in the case of health, we have deep learning where you have a lot of information. Say you have a database with information ranging from your name, you've gone to the hospital, and then you've been diagnosed with this and this. And then based on that database containing a lot of information from diseases, maybe your name, your age, then you'd like to get some insight on, say, what might this person suffer from? This is a very advanced application of like deep learning in health, but basically you get to analyze data in a database, and then based on the analysis, then you can get some insights on that, say on a sickness that this person might be more prone to getting, or you can get very many other applications. I'll look at it a little more in depth, maybe in the second section when I look at the applications of AI in health. And with that introduction to deep learning, we then look at generative AI. This is an upcoming type of AI where AI or deep neural networks are actually capable of identifying patterns and structures within existing data and then generating new and original content. The main applications of this include musical composers and art generators, whereby we have a model that can listen to, say, a particular class of music, say Catholic music, and then it listens to like a thousand of the Catholic type of music. And then based on that information that we get from it, say how the tempo goes up and down, how there's a shift in the musical instruments, then the musical composer can actually generate music that can be of Catholic origin. This is one of the examples. We have very many other applications. And then for art generators, it's basically you give it data of various types of art, and then based on the genre that has the most data, then the AI can combine the knowledge that it has based on that database. And by database, which is the term I'm using a lot, I mean a large collection of data stored at one place. So digitally, either on the cloud, where we have like unlimited storage, or on a flash drive. And then when you have that, that is the database. And then the database is what now gives the input to the particular deep learning or machine learning network. And therefore, when I talk about art generator database, then it's a collection of various art types, say ones drawn by hand, others that are painted, and then based on the combination of that art, then an AI model can actually generate more data. And the key requirements for this is one, we need to have very high quality data. And this is because we are training the model or the generative AI to be able to generate high quality data. And therefore, we talk of this term that says, if you give a computer high quality information, then you get high quality output or high quality output. Basically, sorry. So if you give a computer high quality data, then you get high quality features or high quality output. And therefore, quality is one very important key requirement. And then the second one is diversity, where to avoid the model being trained on one particular part, and maybe with this particular requirement on diversity, I'll give an example that happened maybe with a few models, maybe based on facial recognition, where if you are to train a model, say, based on uh, images with this particular feature, like you have 99% of data with this particular feature, then if you give it a different feature, say a different color that was not originally in that data, it might not do so well in generating new data of a different type. And therefore, if you train it in this particular way, then it will most probably also generate art, or the output will be more or less closely aligned to what you've trained it on. And then the last aspect or key requirement for generative AI is usually speed. So when we are doing the case of musical generation, as an example, we want to generate music that actually matches the speed or the real-time interaction, where, for example, if you're playing an instrument and then you have some drums be accompanying you're playing the instrument, we want that to happen in such a way that you cannot detect like the differences in pitch or tone, and therefore quality, diversity, and speed are three of the main requirements. And the application of generative AI in healthcare will be drug discovery research, whereby based on the current like database on drugs, where, for example, in the case of, say, we want to come up with a new antibiotic, you have to identify first the disease that you'd like maybe to focus on. Let's say it's a cold, because the cold is viral, and therefore you want to come up with a new drug that can suppress the cold. so that you don't get it so many times. Then what happens is that you have a collection of the various uh, symptoms associated with the disease, and then you have the currently used drug, and then combining that data, that information on the drugs that are currently available, the symptoms that you get from very many people, then if you give a computer that information, it can be able to help in the process of identifying a drug that would then be able to combat those systems more efficiently. And although this is not really like the end, when you get new information on a possible drug, then it's up to now the medical researchers to actually test it out and see whether it works. But it's very useful in new drug discovery research. And then I'll now be heading on to the third branch of AI, which is robotics. So for robotics, just a minute, to give an introduction on robotics, one, we look at what a robot is. So a robot is basically an autonomous machine that is capable of sensing its environment, making decisions based on the sense, and then performing the action in the real world. So traditionally, robots used to perform repetitive or dangerous activities such as uh, like assembling, where you just have to maybe lift a part from here and then take it to this other part. But in the current era, in 2023, and in the past few years, there has been a lot of improvement in the AI techniques, such that robots are actually being deployed in more advanced tasks. And an example of this would be where we have the industrial robots, where they can basically perform activities that are repetitive, but also activities that require more sensing, where, for example, an example in the research that I'm carrying out, we have like a proposed method whereby using a robot, an industrial robot, then you can actually be able to perform a task such as drilling, where in the case of drilling, you need like information on the force and the position, because if we want to implement a robot that can actually drill, it needs to be very precise, and because drilling is basically making a hole, and that hole, it needs to be in a particular dimension so that if it's fitting to a part, then it doesn't move unnecessarily. And therefore, with improvement in AI, then robots are actually being deployed in various many other parts. And I'll look at this more in depth in the following slides. And an example of the broad classification of robots will be one, we have the fixed robots, the industrial robots, and then we have the mobile robots, where drones, underwater robots are basically examples of robots that can move from one place to another, one point to another. And on the mobile robots or drones, these are very useful in healthcare, where they are used to actually supply emergency medical supply services. And this is a combination of both the robot, where the robot is the hardware, and then we have some particular application of AI, where in this case, we have a camera, and therefore we have computer vision, which I look at, I think, as branch number 5 of AI. And therefore, by combining robotics with some other branch of AI, then we can have autonomous robots that can actually perform a task without the manual supervision or control. And this is one example where if you place like your medicine on this mobile robot, this drone, then it can actually deliver it to some place by analyzing the environment and being able to evade an obstacle on the path. And these are very important in carrying out other services, such as in the case of a disaster, and you'd like to do some analysis on whether they are survivors or people that have been affected, say, by floods, then instead of sending out human beings, then you can send out a drone with a camera, and then it can do the surveillance, and you can be seeing the information that it sees in real time. And this therefore can help you in being better prepared and to help the people who are in need. Another application of mobile robots is the humanoid robots. And these are a kind of robots that resemble the human body in shape. And these are mainly built for professional services. And these include medical services whereby they can talk, walk, and express a wide range of emotions like human beings. So what we have here is an example of a robot developed here in Japan. Its name is Pepper, and it was developed during the COVID-19 pandemic. And its main application was to help in patients checking in. And basically, it was at the entrance, and then it will make sure you have a mask because, as you can see on the small image at the center, it can actually tell you, okay, I have a mask on. Why are you not putting on your mask? And the thing with humanoid robots is that unlike maybe the industrial robots, which are more rigid and very raw, like you can see them as being endangering to human beings, the humanoid robots are more close in structure to the human beings, and therefore it makes it easier for human beings to interact with them because, yeah, it resembles a person in way of speech and walking, and some of them can actually smile and even nod and do various other emotions that human beings can do. And therefore, this helps in creating a positive atmosphere whereby you're not afraid to like interact with it because in a sense, in a way, it actually looks like a person and it can therefore be very efficient in doing various other tasks. And other examples of humanoid robots are one, a Sweden developed mental body whereby in the case of cancer patients, because they are hospitalized for long hours and for long durations, and therefore to avoid their mental deterioration, you have a robot that can actually converse with them. And this helps in creating that positive atmosphere where they don't feel alone. And although it's not really a person, but the fact that you can actually communicate with it helps in like creating a positive atmosphere that can then help in your quick recovery. And another one is in France, developed for telepresence and assisting caregivers. And this is whereby we have the old people, the aged people, and they cannot say be able to do a particular task. And then you have a robot with which can be able to talk and walk, and it can actually say lift a cup from one place to another. And by doing that, it can be used in caregiving as well as talking with the patient. And another very recent application of robotics is medical prosthetics. And this is in the case where we have artificial limbs to replace missing body parts and help functioning in nearly all the activities a person would. So these replacements happen in the case where you have traumatic injuries, such as an accident or the military, and say you have your hand amputated. And in the case that you'd still like to use both your hands and the hand has been cut off, then you have a robot arm that can actually function like a similar, like the other hand and in coordination with what we call biosignal processing, whereby in the case of like a robot hand, then you have EMG, electromusculography, whereby you have the coordination between the muscle and the brain. And therefore, when you contract your hand, it's the signals that are sent from the robot arm will actually resemble the signals that are sent from, say, your bicep or tricep. And therefore, the signal impulses that will be sent to the brain will be interpreted as similar to how like a normal hand would. And therefore, by having such incorporations of robotics, we can have the ability to do activities such as walking, running, eating. And although we do not have, say, one hand or one leg, with the ability or with the help of uh, robot hardware, then you can actually be able to still do that. And after looking at robotics, I'll now proceed to look at one of the most, not one of, the most advanced humanoid robots that we have as of now. It's called Sophia, and this robot was created by Hanson Robotics in 2016, and it is so advanced that it can actually smile. And if you look at it when it's fully like closed off without seeing the robot parts, you can actually mistake it for a human being because it can it can replicate all the emotions such as raising the eyebrows, smiling, nodding, and therefore the goal of humanoid robotics is to be able to create a robot that will be almost indistinguishable from a human being. And this is so that you can create that environment where although you're interacting with a robot, you feel as if you're interacting with a human being. And the main reason for this, because as I mentioned, humanoid robots are mainly created for some particular type of service. So mainly Sophia was created with the aim of accompanying the age, because we know in the country, in the cases of developed countries where we have like the aging population, and because there's so many and there are all these houses for the aged, and sometimes living alone or being alone, you can actually suffer from various other sicknesses because loneliness, depression can actually cause more and more advanced or various negative signals. And therefore, by using, say, a humanoid robot, you can therefore be able to have a robot that resembles a human being that can actually talk with you and make you feel as if you're talking with a person, but it's a robot. And therefore, in one way or another, you can feel better and it can just improve your mood. And this application of humanoid robots is by combining branches of AI that some of them I've mentioned, like the machine learning, deep learning, and computer vision, which I'll briefly look at later on. And finally, we have natural language processing, which I'll still look at as the last section of the branches of AI. So, oh, okay. Natural language processing is actually the fourth. So natural language processing, or as it's commonly referred to as NLP, is concerned with giving computers the ability to understand text and spoken words in the same way as a human being. So basically, you have either like text or spoken words, and therefore, based on that, it can actually interpret what you mean by it and respond to you in such a way that it can be close to what a human being would. And this is by a combination of computational linguistics, which deals with analyzing the human language based on rules, and then by now combining the various deep learning or machine learning techniques, then you can have an NLP model that can then respond to various queries, either in text or in speech. So examples of this will be one, the language translation-based services, whereby you speak to your phone in, say, English, and then the output is in Japanese in much less the same way a human being will interpret it. Of course, with some few differences here and there, but basically it's very close to what a human being will, that you can communicate with it. And another example of this would be speech recognition services, where for these we have, say, speech to text, whereby when you're speaking, then you can have a natural language processing model that can actually translate what you're saying to text. And this therefore aids in performing other services such as now translation. And this is one example of speech recognition services. And then for sentiment analysis, this is actually the analysis of emotions, where basically you speak to, like, you have your speech, and then based on, say, the intonation or the wording that you've used, then you have a model, a machine learning model, or sorry, an artificial intelligence model that can actually tell, is that a negative statement? Is that an angry person? Is that a happy person? Or what do they mean from their intonation and how they're actually using the different vocabularies? And this is an example of sentiment analysis. And finally, we have the customer service chatbot, which I'll also introduce one very modern and recent example of a chatbot that has been so talked about that it has become like the new face of AI. So chatbots are basically uh, a model, a machine learning model where you can ask a question in text and then it can give you an answer to it. And this is, say, in the case of if you're in the business of, say, flight services. So most of the queries you receive are to do with maybe traveling from one place to another, or if you're in the healthcare industry, then most people would like to know, I have a cough, and then I'm feeling maybe a bit hot, I have a bit of a fever, and then a headache. What do you think I'm mainly suffering from? So if you input such a question to a medical service chatbot, then based on some of the symptoms that you highlight, then you can have a chatbot that can actually tell you, okay, we are not very certain of it, but you might be suffering, say, from a common cold, malaria, or COVID-19. And these are very useful in providing information that would otherwise not have been available, say, remotely. And yeah, they are one of the ways that natural language processing has actually been deployed very broadly. And to continue with that example on the chatbot, we have ChatGPT, which stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So basically, this is an AI-powered language model that can be able to generate
Excuse me,
text.
Samuel.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm requesting if you can try to wind up so that can also give the other presenter time. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I'll wind up very quickly. So yeah, this is an example of NLP. And then on the fifth one, we have the computer vision, which is basically a computer that can see. So for this, we train it on identifying objects, and therefore we combine like some machine learning techniques and deep learning to be able to have a model that can actually detect some images and then make deductions based on that. And an example of this in health would be X-rays and MRIs, where you can detect patterns based on that image, and then based on what you see, the features that you can extract from that computer vision model, then it can tell where the fracture is, and you can be able to perform other medical services. Another example, and the last one, is the expert system, whereby this is an AI technology that can simulate the judgment and behavior of a human being, and this is mainly deployed to expertise areas such as financial services, telecommunications, agriculture, or in the case of health, we have a cadet, like the cancer decision support tool, being an example of the expert systems, whereby it can aid in detecting cancer at a very early stage. And in various other stages, it can then provide useful information. And then we also have another example of the Explain, which can assist in diagnosing and treating patients. So from that, I'll now give a brief overview of the applications of AI in health before I now hand it over to my co-panelists. So to give a very brief introduction, we have the digitization of the healthcare, where one, we have the electronic medical records, and these are the digital storage of user data. And this is as we looked at before, so that you can get insights based on that data. And then we have other applications such as telemedicine, where you use telecommunication services to connect patients with other healthcare providers. And we have digital medical imaging and digital biomarkers following that, where digital biomarkers are basically data from wearables such as the smartwatch. And then based on the data that is stored, you can then make other deductions on that data. And to give an example in patient care, this is I'll give an example using the chatbot that I mentioned. And the use of chatbots has actually enabled a higher level of patient engagement, whereby unlike where you have a nurse that can, like, a nurse is very busy at times and they may not be able to respond to your queries at that time. And therefore, by having a chatbot that can answer to some of the queries, then you can allow, say, a hospital with few number of nurses to actually respond to the basic queries, and then the nurses can then attend to the more important issues. And then from patient care, we have healthcare administration, where the use of AI helps in streamlining administration for health institutions, insurers, payers, and providers. And this is by doing some analysis so that you can be able to realize or determine how efficiently, say, the health institution is using the available equipment. And this helps in very many applications, which maybe we could look at some other time. And in the healthcare administration, the use of AI helps in stopping cases of fraud through digital trackers. And by deploying the digital trackers, then you can also aim at reducing cost, because things can function more efficiently when there's a way to actually track what is going on. And other examples of healthcare administration is what I mentioned, the use of AI to facilitate and support health workers. And an example of that would be like the patient risk analysis for ICU care, whereby an AI model is used to uh, provide a prediction based on maybe the symptoms by a patient, so that you can tell how likely are they to need the ICU care at this moment. And the importance of this is that you can actually use the AI uh, to separate out, like in the case you have an emergency and you have limited facilities, then in one way or another, the AI can help you to determine the priority or who gets to be admitted to the ICU care first. And then based on like some more analysis, then you can be in a better position to decide, as opposed to where you're just making assumptions or decisions based on opinion. It can provide a more informed decision. And finally, the digital imaging is one of the other applications of AI, whereby by using various other combinations of AI, such as virtual reality, then you can do better medical imaging, such as on the brain, and then you can realize maybe hidden information in the data and perform early diagnosis. And research and development is another direct application of AI, whereby you have training, drug discovery, and even gene analysis and editing actually happening in the lab. And then based on what happens in the lab, then you can better train workers that can actually perform better in a physical workspace. And therefore, for research and development, it starts in the lab, and then after that, it then proceeds to actually be deployed in the actual field. And the last one on robot-assisted surgery, this is an example of the Da Vinci robotic surgery system, which is used for minimally invasive surgery, and it helps to enhance and expand the surgeon's capability, whereby by using the robot, then the surgeon can be able to perform very delicate surgeries without endangering the human being as much as maybe the danger will be if the robot was not used. And finally, I'll now look at the good practice, which is a very brief point. And some of the concerns that we have is overfitting, where you train a machine learning model and it performs really well based on the data that you've given. But then if you give it new data, then it cannot be able to give a good prediction. We call that overfitting. And then underfitting is the opposite of that, whereby it performs poorly on training data. And this means you need to provide it with more data. And another one will be algorithms lacking intuition, and therefore by not being as intuitive as human beings will be, then it impacts the problem solving ability. and other issues such as data privacy and the theoretical fear of robots taking over the world. And another very important one is on copyright issues, and that is why the ethics are very important, as will be looked at later. And to give some of the regulations that are actually happening in the medical sector, we have two main bodies that are based that are used to provide the regulations for the application of, say, robotics and AI for medical devices. And one of these is IMDRF, the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, and the FDA, where there's this sample classification of medical devices based on whether it informs clinical management or actually does the treating. And therefore, based on this classification, you actually have different regulations for, say, level 1 and very high level regulations for level 4, which can provide the treatment or diagnosis for critical situations. And therefore, based on the significance of information being provided, then the regulations differ, whereby for low priority cases, there are not so many, but as you go up the chain from 1, 2, 3, and 4, then the regulations are more because the decision that is being given by the AI affects the person more than it would if it were a level 1. And in robotics, we have 3 of these laws being the regulations, whereby 1, a robot may not injure a human being, and it should obey the orders given to it by human beings. And finally, it should protect its own existence as long as that protection does not conflict with the first and second law, which is injuring a human being and following the orders given to it by human beings. And finally, I now come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And to hand it over to the next speaker, I'll give this very quick overview of an example of the ChatGPT, which, as I said, is a commonly looked at model, whereby this was a prompt to it where, like, I asked it about the Catholic teachings on healing, and the answer was actually very accurate. Well, not very accurate, but based on some further analysis, then you can see that although AI models give like very good answers, for example, for this one, we had Catholic teachings on healings are based on faith, spiritual guidance, and medical science. And it goes ahead and highlights all the various like teachings on healing. And therefore, to conclude my presentation, I would say that AI is very important and it's very useful in our modern world. And although it has a lot of dangers, we can actually learn to use and cope with it. But one of the very important things we need to learn and be cautious about is the ethics, which I'll now hand over to the next presenter to take us on the ethical part of AI, because when we train a model, we want it to be very ethical so that it does not endanger human beings and provides very useful information. Therefore, thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing your questions at the end of this. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Samuel, for that wonderful presentation. And for the interest of time, I will go direct, and I can ask you that you can close your sharing so that the other presenter can be sharing as I share their bio. So our next presenter is Father Paschal Mwakio, who will highlight on the ethical consideration introduced by the application of AI healthcare. And so Reverend Father Dr. Paschal Mwakio hails from Taita Taveta, Kenya. He holds a bachelor degree in philosophical studies from Affriate University of Urbaniana in Rome. He is also a holder of bachelor degree in theological studies from Regina Apostolorum Pontifical University in Rome. He is an ordained Catholic priest of the Archdiocese of Mombasa. He did his master's and doctorate degree in bioethics at Regina Apostolorum Pontifical University, Rome. He is the author of a published book in 2014 entitled The Right to Life, an African Concept About Life, a Bioethical Approach for Kenya. He has also co-authored a few articles. He is currently a member of the Kenya National Commission for UNESCO, abbreviated as KNATCOM, Social and Human Science Program, an expert committee from 2019. He is also a member of Bioethics Society of Kenya. He has participated in a number of conferences and forums on matters of bioethics. He has been an external examiner at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa for master's and doctoral degree students. And in that regard, he was my external examiner. He is a member of PACTPAN in the units of health and healing, and also BBI and Digital Youth Faith Influencers of Church of Now unit. He is a bioethicist trainer and a faculty member at Bioethics Training Institute. So you're most welcome, Father, and let us just be patient. Today is our day, so that we can be able to listen to what our presenters has prepared for us. Father, the floor is yours. Father, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sister Teresa, and also thank you for the helpful presentation of artificial intelligence. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Father, yes. We can hear you. Yeah.
Can you still hear me? There's something which has happened this side.
Yes, we can hear you.
And I see the screen.
No, not at the
Okay.
moment.
Yeah, we can see the screen, but we can hear you.
Okay.
You can see it now. Go ahead.
Ethics is not about the church alone. It is about the whole society. It is a concern for the governments, for NGOs, and every human being. So that's why I'm going to take you through the various categories of ethics in regards to what I've mentioned. We shall also see a professor called John Lennox, and we shall see Ubuntu and AI, and finally, UNESCO and AI. What is ethics? Ethics, in summary, is about well-founded standards of what is wrong and what is right, what we ought to do. It is about rights, obligation, and benefits to society and the human at large. Ethics is the moral principles that govern either our behavior or the activities which we deal with. What is ethics of AI? In summary, it is about the moral implications of creating or using artificial intelligence systems. I don't need to specify more. Samuel has already given us the details about us. So it is about the values and principles and techniques that guide the development and deployment of AI technologies. Francis and Artificial Intelligence. Pontifical Academy for Life, which is in Rome together with the Renaissance Foundation, came up with what we call the Rome Call for AI. It is a document which was signed in February 28. The signatories need to take, inclusive also the Jewish and the Islamic delegates. Francis takes note that AI is increasing day in, day out in all the aspects of life. You have seen even how Samuel has mentioned the question and answer about Ask AI, ChatGPT, and how it is being useful to everyone. So this one affects totally each one of us and how we live with AI today. So it encourages what we call algor ethics. Algor comes from algorithms. So algor ethics, ethical reflection on the use of algorithms in both the public and the private sector and the development of technical solutions. So there's need for ethical guidelines in AI. So there's the call also for evaluation of what impact is so far received from AI, and are there any negative effects or impact which need to be corrected? And most so accountability of can see clearly network flags together. Sister
Sorry,
Teresa, are we together? Hello.
Your network is fluctuating.
Okay, thank you for confirming that we are together. Sorry for that. Which point did you last hear me, sister? Can you hear me?
Yeah, on this slide. Just continue with this slide.
Okay, kindly text in case there is any technical hitch.
Okay, I will
so
do
the call for AI ethics, the Pope applauds the efforts by the Pontifical Academy for Life to safeguard the good of human family. He promotes a shared ethics and a fraternity which does not discriminate on anyone. And above all, vigilance against misuse of any technology and AI. Keep that. So the Pope agrees that there are challenges ahead of the horizon of AI. We have seen how Samuel has specified the various areas in which technology is yet to come, the generative, the deeper learning part, the generative part. There, we have a focus on AI, and there are great challenges definitely ahead. So the digital innovation and technological progress should grant mankind its centrality. We should not lose focus on who a human person is. It must try to serve humanity as a whole, respecting, of course, the dignity of the human person, and not only focus on profit or power. We cannot rule out profit and power, but we are sure that it is there, and the concern is that AI should not only be concerned about it. It should not aim at gradually replacing people in workplace. We have seen how robots are serving people in hospitals, in restaurants, and various areas of the machinery. But the aim should not be gradually replacement of people field of AI. He has mentioned about Sophia. And in Gnosticism, Sophia means actually a female figure. It is an analogous human soul, the feminine aspect of God. And it is also a feminine twin, divine ion of Jesus. So the name, I think, was specifically chosen, if I'm not wrong. So let's have some comparison between Sophia and the human beings. Just put your thumbs up for me to know that everything is okay, that you can still follow me. Sister Teresa, are you following me? Okay, I can see somebody has raised up their hand, so that means okay. Okay, thank you. So, Sophia, the human beings have natural feelings, but they can fail when programmed. But human beings, on the other hand, can isolate others, disconnect from others. Singapore has granted citizenship to Sophia, the robot. This is a legal person. Will this legal person have any other rights of marriage or voting? Or whereby on the other side, we have refugees who are human beings who have been denied even citizenship. Sophia has programmed emotions, compassion-like. On the other side, the human beings have indifferences. We are heartless. Guided by, the robot is guided by the laws. We have had the 3 laws of the robots, robotic laws. On the other side, we are guided by human laws. Can we trust robots? If we want to ask ourselves this question, whether we can trust robots, then we ask ourselves also whether we trust other human beings. And for sure, it is not every time that we trust one another. Hello. Can you follow me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
We can hear you. In case we don't hear you, I'll let you know.
Okay. I'm trying to share my screen, and somehow it is dragging a bit, but let me just go on. I'll slide is a bit stuck. I'm trying to see how to
Maybe you can refresh.
stop sharing, and then
And you're breaking. Sorry.
again. Yeah, I've stopped sharing and then I'm sharing. Can you see it now? Can you see it?
It's still opening.
Can you see my slides?
I'm saying they're still opening.
Okay. Okay, let me try and reshare once more. It's still opening?
Yeah. Yeah, it has opened now.
So which are the church concerns which we are having? Regarding some of the issues you mentioned, is reducing human agency, the capability of person to determine by themselves, to be creative, to reflect. All that is by programs. Between robot and human person, does it have the freedom? Freedom when programmed, but at the end, who is the moral status? Who has the moral status? It has to be the human person. So the AI has only to assist humans in decision making, but should not replace actually the human judgment. Somebody must be culpable behind the robot, and this is the human person. AI should not manipulate or force individuals, especially in the medical context, or coerce them, but they have to at least to assist in all that is possible. Robots and machines. Use of robots is safer. For instance, during the pandemic of COVID-19, robots could not be infected. We asked a question there, can robots die? Maybe Samuel can answer that later on, whether robots can die. What if robots can be programmed to infect viruses to human beings? That's also a concern. There is also algorithmic bias, repeatable errors. You have heard that it is fed with a lot of information. So there could be also unfair outcomes in the diagnosis of some of the diseases. Samuel has mentioned about telemedicine. And the issues there in telemedicine is about sometimes the data privacy. You are in communication, telecommunication with a patient. There could be issues of data privacy or even the general privacy with the patient, because once the data, the communication is the clouds, then everything is not safe. We have mental concerns also, over reliance of artificial intelligence. People are now just typing, tell me what are the objectives of this topic, and everything comes out. I want to do a research paper, everything comes out. There's no that personal interaction and mentorship with maybe a student teacher who is a human being, and people are relying mostly on AI. So socialization, human relations versus exclusion is coming out. So which are the principles which the church is concerned about or suggesting for the approach of AI? That there's potential benefits of AI in terms of medicine, as we have heard from Samuel, and treatment. Also reducing environmental impact. Enhance, at the moment we are talking about El Nino coming, I'm sure AI has been of help to predict and to warn about what is to come. So the risks and challenges posed by AI include the privacy, the autonomy of the person to manage by himself or herself, informed consent, accountability between experts in technology, just like Samuel is an expert in technology, and theology itself. We have bioethics and other concerns to address the moral implications. So in healthcare, AI has risk of reducing actually the contact and the care. As we have seen, there are some of the robots who take care of the sick people, as Samuel has stated. So there's that risk, a risk of reducing the human contact, the care, the human touch. Robots are feeling compassion. We have already answered that. There's need for balance actually between the AI use and the human caregivers. But as the world goes on the Western world, most of the end life and most of the patients who are in their terminal phases mostly are taken care by other machines or other people. They're not in the family. Maybe in Africa, it will come a time whereby we no longer take care of our people and we prefer robots. The principles the church is suggesting is a principle of responsibility to whoever is behind the AI technology. Human dignity, make sure that we respect the humans' whole humanity, including the less. It was happening during the corona times. Solidarity, whereby there is that interconnectedness in technology to assist in the vaccine development, for instance, and so forth. And then proportionality and discrimination. So especially when it comes to weighing out which are the costs, which are the benefits, which are the risks, and so forth. Summary of the church's concerns: transparency. It has to be understood by all. At least we started first of all by understanding what AI is before coming to the ethical concerns. Inclusion: no one should be discriminated against this use of AI, including those who are not fully developed countries. we have to be responsible for all what we are doing, and should avoid or at least minimize or lessen the biases. It has to be real and private. This is the Pope who released a guidebook on AI ethics, and he's put like a robot actually himself. You can see the way he is, and the robots behind him. So some news: Vatican announces the theme for the next World Day of Peace as Artificial Intelligence for Peace. This is the theme for the next World Youth Day, next World Peace Day. It has released the guidebook as mentioned with some of these principles we are mentioning, partnering with Santa Clara University Center for Applied Ethics, and together they're going to form an institute called Ethics and Culture Institute of Technology. So this is a Vatican-led ethics think tank. It's about the ethics in the age of disruptive technologies and operational roadmap. Let us see something about Professor John Lennox. He has a video clip on the YouTube about AI, man and God, and how human are robots. AI has narrow and limited intelligence. That's what he's saying. The artificial intelligence is narrow and limited. And how does he explain that? He says that robots or machines are not intelligent on their own. They only depend on what is fed on them, what is programmed, as Samuel has explained to us. So the designer or the programmer is the most intelligent person and not the robot, because without this person behind, the robot would not be intelligent artificially. So AI is creepy, scary, as some people are saying. So he has this concern of data privacy, just like we have mentioned it, and Samuel has mentioned it, and he's talking of what is called surveillance capitalism. For instance, the World Coin, which was just recently in Kenya, and the eye scan, issues of facial recognition and back recognition. This is part of deep learning, if I'm not wrong, what I've heard from Samuel. So it is actually a form of surveillance capitalism. The world, we want to be surveilled, monitored every movement. It is good for security, yes, but how much of our privacy are we ready to let go for security purposes? The data which is taken from us, for instance, the one which is taken from the World Coin, those people are lining there and being compensated for that, for their data to be taken. It is sold to the third party without our knowledge. Which kind of consent did they give? Is it a broad one, just a general one, consent without specifications? Is it categorical that this data is going to be used for X, Y, Z purposes? Or it is dynamic form of consent whereby it can be redirected for various uses? We are not sure what the third party is going to do with our data. So these are concerns regarding AI. So in future, one might not be able to get a job or to be promoted. You might not be able to be welcomed in some places because AI is monitoring you. You're walking in the streets, you dump rubbish, garbage in the wrong place. AI is monitoring your movements because it knows it has learned how to detect you from your back. And next time you go to look for a job, you won't get it. You're monitored. Your penalties are being deducted for some misconducts which you are doing. So AI is there to have a healthy society. That means discrimination against unhealthy society. So if there are individuals who are not healthy, they are not doing what is expected of society, then they are discriminated against. Samuel talked about gene editing in matters of AI. So in the gene editing, we have manipulation of the human genome for therapies or for any other use. So that means we can be able to identify which genes are specific for what. From the designer whereby you can design what you want to put on, to the designer babies that with the gene technology, gene editing, we can be able to design babies who have a high IQ without some genetic disorders. You can be able to design who has specific genes to make them run fast and win the marathon, like we have just won, and a few other countries, Ethiopia and Tanzania, and so forth. So the genetic mentality to perfect human beings is there, which is equal to actually eliminating some of the undesired traits and desired persons. So that is gene editing. The AI, science the only way of the truth? No. Professor Lennox says no. Science is not even the new savior. No. He talks of scientism, whereby he's considering science as the only truth. But science can only be competent in matters, can only give us the truth and the facts in only matters it is competent in. So it cannot answer the questions like, who am I? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of suffering? That is not an area of science. We have heard about how AI has developed vaccines and uses X-ray, CT scan, and so forth. So, and how it can learn preferences, one's interest. You go to Google, you try to type things, it brings you the things you like. Why? Because AI is learning your preferences, one's likes and interests, and comparing it with the vast data of information database which they have for commercial value purposes. We saw that one there from our panelist, Samuel. That is, I think, is that a paper? Yes, I think it's a robot called Pepper, if I'm not wrong, detecting even when you are getting into the hospitals. So he mentioned something about neurotics and AI and neuroscience. What is the concern here in terms of the ethical issues? It is actually manipulating the brain. The brain is a personal identity. It is specifically for me and for you and for the other. So where do we draw the line now for the privacy, neuroprivacy? So those are the ethical concerns we have. Ubuntu is an African communitarian with to say in Swahili. How is it affected artificial intelligence? Undugu is community. The community can be somehow threatened if in between here, between individual and the society, but then individual and individual is even transferred or interchanged with machines and robots. The moral responsibility is also confused. Who is morally liable for this particular kind of act? Instead of people, for instance, in the Ubuntu mentality, in the Ubuntu ethics, going to visit their sick at a hospital as a community, they find there's a robot taking care of them. So it becomes all confusion. Finally, I'll deal with UNESCO briefly. As I said, the issue of ethics is not only a concern of the church, it's a concern of the government, NGOs, and society at large. UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific, Communication, and Information Organization, Technology Organization, has created opportunities globally. Is saying AI has created opportunities globally, and there are ethical concerns about it. So it has suggested some ethical guidelines or guardrails whereby they'll deal with reshaping the way we work. I mean, just as AI has reshaped the way we work and live and interact, so we need an ethical compass to handle these things. The standard setter sets so many instruments to guide us. So what has it recommended? Protection of human rights and freedoms and human dignity must be done with artificial intelligence. Living in a peaceful and just manner and interconnected societies so that AI does not separate these bonds which we have. And AI has to ensure diversity, not just programming and thinking of one thing, diversity and inclusiveness, whereby nobody is excluded. It also supposed to ensure and encourage environmental flourishing and also ecosystem flourishing. It has come up with policy action areas which are suggested now to the member states so that they can adopt them. So which are the human rights approach UNESCO is suggesting for AI? Proportionality and do not harm. We remember the principles actually of do not harm, non-beneficence, non-maleficence. All these principles are very important, justice and autonomy. So safety and security I've mentioned, the right to privacy and also right to data. How safe are we with our data? How private are we? How ready are we to lose our privacy for the sake of surveillance? So this has to be a multi-stakeholder and adaptive governance and collaboration for us to come up with these ethical principles. Responsibility and accountability, you've mentioned, transparency and explainability, to understand what AI is also, human oversight and determination, sustainability, awareness and literacy, fairness and non-discrimination. So these are the policy actions. You can also get them online on what actually they are suggesting to the member state countries. Otherwise, thank you very much for being there and being patient in this session of ethical concerns regarding AI. Back to you, Sister Teresa.
Thank you so much, Father Paschal and Samuel, and all of you, who are listening to us. You must bear with me that it was such a wonderful presentation, and the two panelists had really prepared to share with us about what is artificial intelligence and even the ethical implication that comes about with it. And so at this moment, I want to invite anyone with a comment or a question, just raise your hand, and then I'm going to invite you. Anyone? Yeah, I want to give about 2-3 minutes, and then we'll be closing our webinar. Anyone with any comment or a question to the president?
Yes, Sister Terry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sister Zipporah. I want to thank our presenters, Samuel and Father Paschal. It was really interesting, and even to know about Sophia. But I'm wondering, is it only one Sophia, or do we have many Sophias? the one who is given the citizenship by Singapore. And then also another question is that when robots are accompanying our elderly members, our sick members, now that we program them, so can we program them to speak like Kikuyu, Kimasai? Is it possible? Yeah. So thank you very much. And at the same point, I think I'm also a bit worried because now I think even the families will be affected now that a person can decide to marry a robot for company because it's something that is speaking. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Samuel, you can take the first two questions. I think you can handle that. I'll try to respond to the third.
Okay, so at the moment, we only have one Sophia. I think currently we do not have a lot of mass-produced humanoid robots. So for most of them, like Sophia being the most advanced, we only have like other versions of humanoid robots, but only one Sophia. So the other one was on let me see, did I note it down? Okay, so, and to answer the next one.
On local language.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. So about that, yes, on the local language, it can actually happen, but the issue is, you see with Kikuyu or with a lot of maybe the local languages in Kenya, there's not a lot of, say, digital information on, say, how the grammar happens, how the rule to the language and the culture, because as we saw in the AI, you actually need to train it. So one of the reasons why even in the other main languages, maybe other than maybe English, French, German, it becomes hard to train an AI model on all the languages because you actually need a lot of data, like massive data, so that you can actually understand even the deepest of meanings. So in the future, it might be possible, but again, in the future, we are not sure whether a lot of people will be speaking Kikuyu. So it's a matter of, is the information available? Like, do you have the training data on the Kikuyu language or on the Maasai language? But if you have the data, then it can actually be trained on about any language that you may have. But the preference is to go for the language with the most speakers and with the most documentation so that you can actually train it to be almost equal to the speakers of that language. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. And then now I invite Father Pascal, and there's a question on the chat too, Father Pascal. You can also answer the same as we wind up now.
Okay, thank you. So the concern is about whether people would come up to want to marry robots. Of course, the world is full of surprises, not only the robots, but there are people who have come up wanting to marry non-humans, animals, and so forth. We have, even before the Sophia robot, we have the sex dolls, the sex robots, the sex dolls, Samantha, and so forth. And some people are very much eager to embrace them. So that is a concern, because what if even tomorrow we have another female robot, not Sophia now, I don't know what they're going to call the male one. And these robots, we are told that this male robot is marrying the female robot. Which kind of agreements are they going to have? So human beings are full of surprises. That's why I talked of, someone talks of the three laws of the robotic laws, and I talked of, we have also human laws. Which kind of, all these are complications, ethical complications. What if a person says that he wants to marry Sophia, a female robot, or a woman to be married by a male robot? All these are concerns whereby with this world, with all the rights we have of autonomy and freedom, you might not even stop them. But this is an ethical concern, a challenge to the family, which is the unit cell of the society. So all these are concerns. That's why ethical principles have come up so that we can be able to handle some of these concerns in good time. Thank you. Also, there's another question on the chat. What is the church's official position on AI? This is what I've been talking about the first part. Maybe you joined in later on, but actually I began with what Pope Francis is talking about. So I've already covered the church's position on AI and ethics, that it is concerned about several issues, about the human dignity, that the person has to be respected, that also there's the issue of robots, for instance, not gradually replacing the human person. There's need for that human touch. And all what I've mentioned was about the church. The first part, which I dealt with, was about the position of the church on AI. If you maybe didn't get that part, I'm sorry, Dr. Emmanuel, you will still have the slides which will be shared to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to wrap up our conversation today for the interest of time. And I must say it was such a wonderful presentation. And allow me to conclude this presentation by saying that, looking at the whole issue of the AI, we look at the machines and see them to have that, they are believed to have self-consciousness that enables them to make representations of themselves, as we have been told by our panelists. However, I want to say that general intelligence, it remains elusive. It's not something that you can say these robots or these machines have that general intelligence, because it's only rational human persons who are creative, who are irrational and inconsistent, as well as have characteristics of natural intelligence, such as perception, analogy, common sense, ambiguity, and neurological awareness. This can only be found through the human person. So the robot can only maybe imitate that. So also the cognitive abilities can only be found again to the human persons, who are even again morally are able to make morally responsible decision. And that is why when we are applying the artificial intelligence, then the ethical perspective must always remain with us. And so at this juncture, I want to sincerely thank our presenters. Thank you so much, Father Paschal, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Samuel, for your wonderful presentation. And I think we have only begun this topic on artificial intelligence, so we can be able to have more of this in our future presentation. And allow me also to say that we'll be having another webinar on 6th of October. Which will be organized by the QAM, that is Doctors with Africa. And the topic that we are going to be discussing will be the role of Catholic Church in the African healthcare system between preservation and the future vision. So on 6th of October, also be able to join us for also this another webinar on healthcare. And so without taking much of your time, and also I want to thank you, our presenters, and also those who have been listening to us on the Zoom, and even all those who are going to follow up the webinar, the YouTube link. Thank you so much always for your support that you always accord to us. Now I invite Sister Zipporah to give us a closing prayer.
Thank you so much, Sister Terry. Yeah, let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Almighty Lord, we come before thy presence. We want to thank you for these wonderful moments that you have granted unto us to learn more about the emerging technology, the AI. Thank you, dear Jesus, for the gift of Samuel and Father Paschal. Thank you for whatever they have shared with us. And I pray that you may be with each and every one of us, that we may be able to apply our ethical standards as we use the upcoming technology. Dear Jesus, we also want to pray even for the organizers of this webinar. May you bless each and every one of them. And now, as even we engage ourselves in other activities, we pray that you may bless us. And we pray this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.
People are asking how they can get the presentations. I don't know. If they are on the PACTPAN, then in PACTPAN, it will be sent through the PACTPAN's networks. But if not, maybe somebody can drop their email if they are not on PACTPAN. Or what do you suggest?
So you can write to me. I'm trying to type my email. Is that one before we close our webinar, because we are still online. So tikirago@kwea.edu. You can write to me in case you are not in PACTPAN, and then we can see how you get the